Welcome. Welcome everybody out there in whatever the weather might be, wherever you are located. Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I'm Roberta Saphire, an attorney from Sharon, Massachusetts, but I'm not there right now. God bless Zoom. And
Hi, and welcome. I'm Camille Barron. I'm a I'm a healthcare advisor and a financial organizer also in Massachusetts. And we have someone who was with us, I'd say at least 3 years ago, maybe
At
longer,
least.
Roberta?
oh, I thought it was 10 years ago. When did it all
3, 10,
happen?
what's the difference?
Well, I tell you, it all happened, and then I'll be so happy to introduce her. It all happened when people started bringing their pets into places, and they started saying, "Well, they're service animals," and then well, I'll let Sherrie tell. We welcome Sherrie King, and she's out in Springfield, Mass. Plus, she handles all the United States and everywhere else. Sherrie, first of all, start with your background because you were on the show before, but I think it's a long time.
Yeah, I think my grandkids were all little. One of my granddaughters is going to be a teenager this year. So
Okay.
it's been a minute. But anyway, yeah, so for me, I've been doing dog training and rescue and things like that for, really age myself, in excess of 30 years at this point. I have my own dog training business, which is Peking's Paws, but I also work for an organization called Train a Dog, Save a Warrior. And what we do is we actually rescue dogs out of shelters and rescues and things like that. And we pair them up with veterans that are in need of a service dog. So people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, or MSTs or TBIs or things like that, they work with us. And through TATSA, it's absolutely free to the veteran. So it's a no cost benefit for them that they get. And it's a fantastic program. I've been with them, oh my goodness, 2010, I think I started with them. So I've been with them for a long time as well. And yeah, you are right. Like, especially, right now we do have a very serious issue going on with people just trying to take their emotional support animals. Sometimes they're not even that. If you go to the doctors and you get paperwork filled out that says that you need to have your dog, it's a good emotional support animal for you. That's wonderful. I'm glad that people are able to do that. However, that does not mean your dog has right to public access. It should not be any place public. All that does is protect you in your housing. So if you rent an apartment or you're renting a house or something like that, and there's a policy for no pets, no dogs, that's when you can get the emotional support animal, and you're protected in your housing. Very different than a service dog. Those dogs are animals, because you can use kind of any kind of animal for that. They're not, they're just protected inside your home. It doesn't mean that you can take them to the grocery store with you. It doesn't mean that they can get on an airplane with you. It doesn't mean that you should be taking them into any kind of a public place. If the average person isn't allowed to take your dog there, you shouldn't be either.
They do that, and
they do it a lot. It's a huge problem, especially with the pandemic.
I gotta say, even before the pandemic,
it's made of something that was a really big problem, just a nightmare for people with actual service dogs.
We just got a note that you were here in 2014.
Yeah, so it was a while ago.
8 years ago.
8 years.
But at the time, I remember searching you out, and we got you from the helping the warriors, people coming
with Train a Dog, Save a Warrior.
But one of the reasons we were looking is we had 2 licensed inns. We still got 1 licensed inns, and people started bringing their dogs in, and we have and other people. People are allergic to pets, but and you're limited at the time, and I haven't looked into it, but I know the laws started getting lax, and then they started getting strict again because people are bringing peacocks onto airplanes.
Insanity.
Yeah, it was, you could only ask certain questions. Can you update us? What questions can you ask people now?
So the questions haven't really changed a whole lot. You can really only legally ask somebody if that is a service animal. And you are allowed to ask them what tasks or services that the animal performs. However, you can't make them demonstrate what it's doing. The easiest and best way that I tell all the business owners that I talk to, the best way to go about handling a situation like that, if you have a question, if it's a service dog, first of all, even if it is a valid legal dog that somebody has done their due diligence and they've gone through and they've hired a trainer, an accredited trainer, or gone through an organization like Train a Dog, Save a Warrior, if they're in a public place and their dog isn't behaving appropriately, you have every legal right to ask them to leave. And anybody with a real service dog is going to understand they need to leave. They're not going to give you a hassle. Unfortunately, what I find happens is a lot of people who don't have an actual real service dog, they're the ones who are going to fight and argue with you. I'm going to call the police on you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It's against the law. You can't do this. Those are usually the people that you're better off just calling the police department yourself and having them removed, because 9 out of 10 times, they're not an actual valid service dog. They have no legal right of access. It's too easy to, go online and print out a form kind of thing. So that's what I tell people to really focus on nowadays is the behavior of the dog.
I got another story. This is why these things come up with people when it happens to them, and then they become overly aware. At a function facility, which we also got our fingers in, somebody showed up at a wedding with 2 dogs, 2 little dogs, and they said they were service animals, and of course, like you say, they're the ones that put up the stink, so to speak. And the little dogs were running around the whole time. So I said to them, first of all, usually they don't come in pairs. It's one. Is that still true? Just one. All they need is one. And if they're a real service dog, they stay by the owner. They don't go off. And then the third thing is, which I forget right now, there's so many things, is, we used to say to them if they checked into the inn and they said, well, I need my service dog is my papers. So we would say, well, what do you do when you go? What do you do with the dog when you go to work in the morning? Well, he just stays here or she just stays there. Well, if they're the service dog, they're supposed to be with you all the time. So these are things that you watch out for. So we in the end would say, well, call the police or something, but you can't stay here.
And that's actually completely accurate. If you have a service dog, it goes with you everywhere. You don't go someplace without your walker if you need it, do you? No, you don't go anywhere without your dog. The dog does absolutely everything with you.
What happens if someone, say in the workplace, someone legitimately has an allergy and they start wheezing or something if a dog is around?
Then that's
what happens to the rights of the service dog owner and the other employee?
So nothing happens to the service dog owner. Legally, the company has to let that person bring their dog. They can do nothing about that. And that is where sometimes it can get into a little bit of a tricky situation, because now what they have to do is they have to actually accommodate the person with the allergies. And usually that's more with like moving them away from the dog and kind of keeping distance between them kind of thing. Allergies aren't usually what the problem is. Usually it's people's immense fear of dogs, because let's be real, if you got attacked by a dog when you were a child kind of thing, that can stay with you lifelong.
Oh, sure.
Or you're just terrified of any dog that you see. That's usually more what it boils down to when people say they have allergies. It's not allergies.
Oh, yeah.
Usually it's the other person is kind of full of baloney. What they're saying is not actually accurate. They're just upset. Those are the same people that are like, well, I'm going to bring my dog into work too then, because obviously we can do that. It's really not okay. What people forget is this is, we're in 2022. People have a lot of invisible wounds. You cannot look at someone and say, there's nothing wrong with you. You can't do that. You don't know what kind of traumas, what kind of, somebody could be just prone to having like massive seizures, and the dog helps them out with that. You're not going to see that unless the person's actively having a seizure. Right. You could have somebody who's got, problems with vision that comes and goes kind of thing. You're not going to see that. You're not going to know, unless they're having a problem at that particular moment. So, the only time that you really should question anything about, if you see someone with a service dog, is if the dog isn't behaving. So the dogs that you see that people are carrying around in their pocketbooks or in those little carry-on bags or those god-awful strollers that people put dogs in and all of those things, and they try to say they're service dogs, absolutely not. The dog cannot do its job properly if it's contained or confined in any way. It shouldn't be walking up to people soliciting attention. It shouldn't be jumping on people going past. It's not going to try and grab the food off your plate or even on the floor that's right in front of them. These are very highly trained dogs. They don't really do much of anything without the okay of their partner.
Are there certain breeds of dogs that are better able to be service dogs than others?
I have to say, hands down, my favorite is still any kind of a pitty mix. Still my absolute favorite, has been since when I very first started a long time ago with this. And the reason for that is because, contrary to people's popular belief, any kind of a pitty mix is really well known as kind of the nanny dog. So think of things like the Little Rascals. What is the dog in there? It's a pit mix. And he's a perfect example of what pit mixes are. They're super sweet, they're super loving, they're super outgoing, and they're great with any kind of animal, any kind of people. They're just phenomenal dogs.
Pit mix?
Any kind of a pit bull mix, yes.
Oh, a pit bull mix.
Yep, because people have that, they have that big thing out there, they're fighters, and they're not that way by nature. They are not at all that way by nature. By nature, they are literally known as the nanny breed. They're the breed of dogs that, people would have that would be at home with their kids while they were out working the fields. Back in the days when, you left your kids unattended for long periods of time, you would leave them with the dog. And that is their true nature, who they really are. And that's not to say that, like with any breed, there's good and bad in any breed at all. But with those breeds, I really like them because of their loving nature. They're just really relaxed, super chill, just super affectionate dogs.
What about German Shepherds? You usually see.
So Shepherds they're really good working dogs, but not usually for this kind of work. And there's literally an exception for every rule when it comes to anything, especially with dogs. You cannot judge an entire breed based off a dog. And I've trained several Shepherds that are phenomenal service dogs. When you start getting into the bigger dogs, you kind of start getting into a little bit more difficulties with things based off of their size. So if you have a dog like a German Shepherd size, you've got a dog that, 100, 120 pound dog, you're going on an airplane with that dog. Well, it needs to be able to tuck in the seat in front of you. It's really hard to do with the bigger guys. So unless, you've got a lot of money and you're, constantly flying first class, where, it's a lot more expensive to do that. So you have that additional space. And that's where it gets a little bit more difficult with them. So generally, 60 to 80 pounds is usually a good thing, unless you're looking at mobility kind of work.
Well, I noticed with the yearlines that they kind of gave in as long as they had the papers, because they didn't want to question them. But then they came out with, now they do question them and say that they're not recognizing comfort animals. It has to be.
Because the comfort animal, again, it's an emotional support animal. It has no legal right of access.
Yeah. You
can take a dog that's as well behaved as Cujo and say that is your emotional support animal. Should you be walking around with this dog? No. You absolutely should not. This dog does not have the right temperament, personality, and absolutely no training to be out in a public space. And that's why they started doing that. People were getting attacked on airplanes. The amount of dog bites that were happening on airplanes was absolutely astronomical, because they were saying they were service dogs and they actually were not.
No, they just wanted to take their pet with them.
Exactly. I mean, even people like me, my dog is really well behaved. Obviously, my dog is really well trained. I don't take my dog any of those kinds of places. I'd love to be able to do that. I would absolutely never do that.
Well, what it brings to mind is in the past couple of years with COVID, we've seen so many incidents of unruly passengers. That has mostly to do with whether they should wear masks or not. But I wonder if this type of thing has the potential to create that sort of unruliness on airplanes. Have you heard anything at all like that, Sherrie?
I mean, I've had few people that have had issues with, like, you were saying before with like the allergies and things like that. And then other people really just acting a fool. But so like for any of my people that I've worked with over the years, they get on an airplane and they're the ones who's the mess. The dog just handles it like, okay, this is what we're doing. They walk on the plane, they're directly by their owner's side. They sit exactly where they're supposed to sit. If it's, an international flight, they literally just stay next to their owner the entire time. They're not a problem if they're appropriately trained. But if you have a dog that's on there that's barking, it's growling, it's lunging at people, you're going to have some serious problems on that airplane because you have a very scary dog. Even if it's just a little, a little tiny dog that's, an 8 or a 10-pound dog, you still don't want to get bit.
No.
You still don't want to listen to it bark and, carry on and, kind of act a fool. You don't want to deal with any of that when you're on an airplane. It's
So I wonder what
quarters.
happens to people like the couple of situations we just talked about where someone is just really afraid of a dog. What happens if they get seated next to a
Oh, God.
passenger with a dog?
Right, and that's the reasonable accommodations thing. So generally speaking, most of the airlines will kind of make sure that you're okay with that. And if you're not, they don't generally have an issue with moving your seat.
Mhm.
So, and they do, like, from what I have seen, at least the area, like at Bradley, like they're really good at actually meeting the dog ahead of time to make
Really?
sure that the dog actually is behaving appropriately. And I have seen firsthand in the last year where there was a person there on a flight that I was getting on, and I was like, oh, hell no. I was very upset that this person was trying to say this was a service animal, and I actually went up and said something to them. And the guy said, look, we've already got somebody coming out to address this with this woman. We're going to take care of this. And they ended up not letting her get on the flight with this dog, even though she's doing that. I got the paperwork. She had the paperwork, but the dog was probably about maybe like a 75, 80-pound dog
Boy.
that was growling at everybody walking past the handler.
Yeah, we had a situation where a guest came back and they said they had this service animal, and she says, well, why don't you just meet him first? Because I told her we wouldn't allow it. We were of the opinion we'll take our chances reporting us. And that dog never got out of the car, but he looked like he just wanted to eat me up alive. And afterwards she says, oh, I don't think my dog will be happy here, so forget about it. But what is in recent, in between when we asked you to be a guest again and now, so it's very, very recent, there's a situation where a little girl who has something wrong with her, this or that, it turned out they got her a chicken. Somehow she had a chicken as a pet, and this is a real story. And it really helped her. You could call it a comforting, whatever you want to call it, but it's actually true. But, they make noises and everything. The neighbors complained, and I think there's a court case coming up where they're telling them, you got to get rid of that chicken coop. You've got to get rid of it because of the neighbor. And meanwhile, they have a real case where the little girl, I mean, have you heard of a story like that?
So I haven't. Honestly, I've been so busy. I feel like I'm living in a closet somewhere. I'm so out of the loop on something. But I can explain to you what's going on with that. So chickens are actually smarter than what people give them credit for, and they are really affectionate. They're very affectionate. So I can see where the little girl would be very bonded, and where that chicken would actually be able to help her out. And this is that emotional support animal. You can have anything pretty much as your emotional support animal. It protects you in your home. So if that's a court case, that family will win. The neighbor won't win. The family will win. That is their own home. They have that as a pet for their child. And it's really, how much noise do chickens make?
Well, years ago, I had to get rid of a chicken. The rooster.
Well, the rooster's different. They make a lot of noise.
Made a lot of noise. But I looked it up, and there is an organization for chickens. If you want to become part of this, it's international. It's all over the country where they have a thing, like you say, for chickens. Instead of registering your dog, you can register your chicken. But it'll be interesting. We'll have to see how that court case.
Yeah, you can register the chicken. And again, that's that emotional support thing. That is not a service animal. The only thing you can legally have as a service animal is a dog.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
That is the only legal thing you can have as a service animal is a dog.
Huh.
Once upon a time, it was
cats?
small horses too, but not anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, the small horses is, we do a lot with police.
Mhm.
And it's all over the country, but in our area, there was just one police town that offered this in Andover, and it's called, I think it's CARE or something like that. It's where you just brought it up, with the small horses, and it's supposed to stop bullying and drug-related thing. And they bring these little ponies in, and
That's cute.
they're teaching the kids through the little ponies. You teach with whatever thing you can, but that's interesting. You said the little horses. That's just what it is, the little horses, and that's all over the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of equine therapy
Mhm.
places, and people go there for probably similar things to what you're talking about, Sherry. But for what you're saying, it's not going to be a service animal. It's still
No,
going to be
no.
a service
But
animal.
horses are like big dogs as far as their scope of emotions and their attachments and their bonds and all that. Horses are fantastic animals.
Mm.
And there is the equine therapy is a massive up and coming thing. So many places that didn't offer anything like that before. Now they have a lot of those facilities around, and it's amazing. Like they just do wonderful things for people.
Mm. Mhm.
What about the cat lovers out there?
Yeah, I was going to say cats.
Oh.
Even again, they're not service
Cat
animals.
lovers.
So yeah, you can, again, it's only dogs. And like, I mean, I agree. I mean, I have 4 cats in my house. I'm a dog person
Really?
who lives in a house full of cat people. Love my cats anyways, but there's 4 cats in the house. They're all very highly trained because I also do cat training and behavior. So the cats are all really highly trained. Like the cats know how to retrieve things. They come when they're called. They sit, they down, they stay. They'll jump up on things, off of things. You can teach them all of those things, and cats can be fantastic for an emotional support animal. They can be absolutely fantastic for that. I think people don't give cats a lot of credit where credit is due. They're super intelligent. The problem is that they're way more intelligent than what people give them credit for. So they just like, oh, it's a cat. It's going to do that because it's a cat. I'm like, no, you can fix that behavior. We cannot have them knocking everything over. And, even with things like that, the cats that walk around and they just knock everything down. What do you have for your cat in your house? These are animals that love to be up high. I have shelves and things in my house for the cats to climb up on, like up on the walls so that they're above the door frames. I have, the cat tower behind me, and that's to keep them off of my printer. Almost every window in my house has window perches in it that there's cats sleeping in. You have to give them a good environment. You can't just throw them in your house and be like, oh, otherwise they can be destructive and they can be some work. You have to take into account that animal.
How about lions? You see these stories where the people are in Africa.
Wild animal. No, we're not playing with that. It's a wild animal. No matter what you do, that is a wild animal. And it's unpredictable.
Oh, there was a story in Rhode Island. It was a few years ago where a pet crocodile got loose, and it showed up on a neighbor's deck looking in the window.
God.
And so anyway, the police came and captured it. And there was kind of a battle between the owner of the crocodile and the police. And the owner of the crocodile argued, well, this is my comfort animal. It sleeps under the bed with me. They finally let him have it, but the animal was not allowed outdoors.
Right. They'll find
Yeah.
a way to kind of make that stuff work. And there's common sense in some of that, which I'm surprised they even returned that to them. Like, that's a dangerous animal.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have bonds. They don't get bonded to you like that.
Maybe
If they do, it's a newsflash on me.
Maybe they take the crocodile's teeth out. Don't they do that with the
They do that to snakes and things, which is horrible. It's horrible. Like, really, come on. We're talking quality of life here.
Yeah.
We only have a few minutes left, which I can hardly believe. This is so fascinating. It's just so fascinating. We have people that are just waiting and waiting for this episode to come out because it's so current. It's
Yeah.
always current. I think every day it's current.
I bet you have lots of stories, Sherrie, about your clients in ways that they've benefited tremendously from having these animals.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I love doing what I do for the service dog work. A lot of times, like if I'm working with an autistic kid, because I also do things like that as well on my, through Peking's Paws. But working with like an autistic child who, they've got tactile problems, they can't touch things, they have a problem with different surfaces and things like that. And going from having a kid who, was nonverbal, couldn't touch the dog, couldn't go near the dog. And, by the time it takes time, but, like a year later, you've now got a kid who's now talking because they're talking to their dog. They're now able to touch their dog and love the dog and pet the dog and hug the dog. And that is their buddy. That is their sidekick. And it took, this person who was kind of living in a shell and kind of let them crack that shell and come out and emerge and show you the beautiful person that they actually are in there. It's amazing.
What about service members who come back with PTSD?
So with the service members, a lot of times it's really what it does is we're looking to improve quality of life. So a lot of times with the, just basic PTSD stuff, they have a really hard time in crowds of people. They have a really hard time just being near other people, loud noises, certain smells, certain hairstyles, certain hats, they're all triggers for really negative things. And what we do is we train the dog to pick up on a lot of these things. And as the dog is picking up on it, we are able to actually stop them from having the anxiety, having the panic attack, having the flashback, having any of those things happen. The dog interferes in all that because they can smell what is going on with their handler and they know what is about to happen. So they stop it before the person ever realizes it's even an issue.
No kidding.
It's amazing. And, for most of, our veterans that we work with, the quality of life that they have when we first start as compared to a year or two later is completely different. By the time we're at a year or two later, their life is almost back to completely normal. And I wish we had the magic, whatever, to make everything perfect for them. Sometimes that's, we get it as good as could possibly get. They're able to go back into public. They can go out to a restaurant now and eat with their significant other or their kids, or, they can go into a movie theater now. They can actually go on vacation and go to someplace like Disney with their family. Whereas before that wouldn't even have been a thought.
Unbelievable. And it shows that you must have an awful lot of compassion to even get into this kind of work.
Yeah.
I love what I do.
You can tell. We have to wind up now, believe it or not. That's it.
Well, let me just tell a quick one.
Okay.
I was living in New Hampshire at the time, and there was an attorney who he practiced in his own home. He had an office in the home, and he wanted to build an actual office on the property, maybe a separate building or something. And the town wouldn't let him do it because they said it's not zoned properly. It's zoned as farmland, not commercial, or really not even residential. So the next thing you know, you drive by the house and there's all these goats and other animals in the yard. And his story, and this is so true. He said, well, if my land is farmland, then I'm going to treat it as farmland, and I got farm animals now.
They get tax credits too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why if you drive by some towns, you'll see one cow or one this. But we gotta wrap up.
Okay, Sherrie, it's fantastic to hear from you
Thank
and hear all these wonderful stories, and thank you so much for the work you do. To our viewers, if you have an interest in this topic, or if you have any other topics that you'd like to see us host on this program, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you, because remember, this is your show, the law, your money, and you.
And you.